Hello and welcome to Reddit Rewind, the channel dedicated to bringing you the best curation of those r/videos you love to binge on. If you enjoy our channel, please tap that like button and subscribe for more. Now, we present Reddit Rewind's video of the day. Enjoy.
r/AskReddit. Serious, what's a secret you will take to the grave but don't mind telling on the internet? Only I know that my mother-in-law killed her dog by sitting on it. Poor thing. Almost happened to our neighbor's dog, too. Chihuahua. The overweight son sat on him and broke the dog's pelvis. It survived but could never walk a straight line again after that. Mentioned before. Will never tell anyone I had one of those expensive fancy life-sized sex dolls. Got rid of it at first opportunity after getting a real partner. But it's literally the only secret I have that I'm not willing to say to anyone in real life. I used to work for the airport and so got very discounted fares for friends and family. My mom was going on a trip with her friend to Key West and they were gonna drive since flying was too expensive. I talked her into letting me handle the flying arrangements and they'd save a ton. A typical $500 plus flight turned into like $250 for both of them combined. Well, I was still kinda new at booking reservations and whatnot, and I ended up screwing up the reservation. I think I only booked it for one way or something, so the night before their flight, I rebooked it, and paid the $450 for the both of them money I really didn't have, and have since never told my mom. It was for Mother's Day, so I figured that was my gift to her. It's been nearly 10 years since. I sharted on a New Year's party bus a few years ago. I thought it was just a fart but it was a small shotgun blast of fluid. I stayed calm and threw away my undies at the next bar. Luckily there was little or no shit on the inside of my jeans and I was able to continue the night with no one aware of my poop crime. That happened to me on Halloween a few years ago. I drank 6 Angry Orchards and shot it in my thong. I just calmly walked into the bathroom and tore the side seams of the underwear so I could take them off and throw them away without having to remove my fishnets. No one was the wiser. Speaking of grave, when I was a teenager some friends and I got really stoned and walked around the town cemetery. There was a whole section of generic flat grave markers from the 1800s. I found myself trying to imagine their lives in the same town I lived so long ago. Then I saw one plate kind of sticking up and crooked and I bent down to touch it. It wasn't attached at all, and I lifted it up in my hand. Right then, my asinine stoned teenage brain decided to put it in my backpack. I thought I'd somehow honor this stranger more than the shitty groundskeeper leaving it all willy-nilly in the middle of the aisle. None of my friends saw what I did. Few hours later, sober, and the guilt and panic are setting in. I hid the plate in my closet for about a year before I chucked it back over the fence one day late at night. I hope Bessie Jane Holmes doesn't mind that I kept her for a while. I still think back and shudder at the guilt of such immoral duckery. When I was a kid I used to shit in a tire in the garden because I was scared of getting locked in the toilet. My father burned down my childhood home for the insurance money. He took me along as his alibi, so I could verify he wasn't anywhere near it when it happened. I was 13 years old. I remember crying so hard knowing my clothes, books, photos, all of it would be destroyed. I wasn't allowed to save anything because he told me it would have been too suspicious. I found out years later he blamed it on me, telling the fire chief, plus friends and family. The fire had started because I must have been secretly smoking in my bedroom. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. I feel for you. Lesser than what happened to you. But my mom used to steal my grandfather's painkillers while he was dying of cancer and I found out years later that the reason my whole extended family still hates me is because she told them I was the one doing it. Parents suck. Edit. I've literally never gotten an award for anything. Thank you for the medals. That my dad paid my mom $1,500 for full custody of my youngest sibling. Not only would this be a massive blow to my sibling but my dad remarried quite quickly and the new wife is the very definition of an evil stepmom. If my sibling knew that our mom gave her up for such a small sum of money and the trade-off was 5+ years of abuse she would be destroyed. I agreed to a first date with someone to make him stop crying. 6 years later we're happily engaged and doing great. I don't know how well he remembers that, but I'm not bringing it up. Seems like a good time as any to tell this story. When I was a teenager, my parents were divorced yet lived within walking distance of each other. I would oftentimes walk back and forth between their homes for whatever reason. I got to know a family that lived in the house on the corner of the block my mother lived on. One day as I was passing this house, I noticed a wallet on the ground. I picked up and opened the wallet. I noticed the address on it was the house on the corner, and it was the mom of the family. A very nice lady. Me being a teenager, took all of the money out of the wallet, about $50. I then went back to the home and returned the wallet, explaining I found it down the street. The mother was very relieved and grateful. What always weighed on me is a few weeks later I passed the corner house as I often did, and the lady stopped me. She wanted to thank me for returning the wallet and handed me a $50 bill. I tried to refuse it, but she insisted. I was rewarded for stealing. While it's not a big secret, it is something I always think about for some reason. I've never really had the heart to tell anyone this story. So my grandfather had a hand in making one of the World Series trophies back in the day. He never got any credit, but we have photos and parts from his prototype. When I was a teen, I added what I knew to Wikipedia, since why not, although I believe it's gone now. But funny story, I ended up being touted in newspapers all over the country. Proceed to a few years later, I get a call from my mom, who's almost in tears of joy. She found that wiki page and was freaking out. She was so happy he finally got credit. She ended up making really fancy shadow boxes of the wiki page printed out, copies of the photos and other baseball stuff. She made one for each of her siblings. I've had to just bite my tongue every time I go over there and see this thing hanging prominently in the living room. As a teenager, I had cancer multiple times and nearly died a lot. At one point, I spent several weeks in intensive care and survived despite no doctor thinking that I possibly could live. More than 20 years later, everyone I know still comments on how I survived purely on will to live. I actually spent every moment in that hospital bed in absolute agony, desperately wanting to die. Edit. Thank you to the kind folks for my first Reddit awards and for all of the kind words. I'm healthy now and doing well. My mother is cheating on my father and my father is cheating on my mother. They both know I know this, but made me promise not to tell the other parent. Parents are ducked up sometimes. My first car accident back in high school was not because I swerved to miss a deal like I told my dad and the police. I actually tried to pull the emergency brake and do a 180 while going 50 miles per hour downhill. Had I gone off the other side of the road, I would have gone down a 50-foot hill and into the river. That was the last time I ever tried anything like that. There just so happened to be deer tracks in the mud near the ditch where I ended up. I avoided a ticket and my dad paid to fix my car. I have never told him the truth in the 15+ years since. My dad cheated on my mom and invited the person over when I was 9. She was a severely overweight woman and my dad is also quite overweight. My parents were fighting but trying to work things out. They slept in separate rooms at this point. Earlier that day I had jumped on his bed and broke the board supporting it on the bed frame. I wasn't allowed to do this and always got in trouble for this reason. My mom smelled the fact that my dad had company because she smoked in my house. She asked if I jumped on the bed. I said no. I feared I'd get in trouble. I was surprised there was no follow-up trying to prove my guilt. Years later I remember why she asked and realized my lie basically incriminated him to ducking her. I'm sure he did, but that got him kicked out of my house. Too long didn't read. I broke the damn bed. I was raped with an implement in the youth room of my childhood church by my two best friends at the time. We were basically alone in the building at the time. One did it, and the other held me down. They thought it was a joke funny, even once I started screaming. One of them had a moment of clarity and I suppose realized that what they were doing was wrong, and made the other person stop, and they sat there with me for a few minutes until I'd calmed down. Once I regained myself enough to stand, I racked one of them between the legs with a pool cue. Their parents were waiting in the parking lot, and they were going to call the cops on me until my friend confessed what they'd done to their parents. I was pressured into silence by the pastor at the parents' behest. I've told people, so I guess it's not technically a secret, but nobody's believed me because I'm a big guy, and always have been. The last person I tried to talk to about it actually smacked me in the face, so I guess I'll be dying with this one. Edit. A word. My father-in-law died of a heart attack at a strip club. The cop told my wife and mother-in-law that it was a bar. They assumed it was a sports bar. My brother-in-law and I had to pick up the car from said strip club. We both pledged to never tell the rest of the family. Edit. Got. I hate that this is my most popular post. My brother-in-law didn't have a driver's license. I was only there as the person who could drive the car back to their home. He was ultimately responsible for death certificates, probate or any other legal proceedings after. It's not my ducking business whether or not I should have told his mother and sister anything about how his father died. However, my mother-in-law is super religious and it would have just made her sad. I grew up without my dad and I went to meet him this summer for the first time ever. I realized he loves me but know enough to ever come visit me. Admitting that makes me sick to my stomach and sad as duck is something I just can't do to anyone, neither to him. Once when I was 13 I went a week and a half without pooping. I was on a camping trip and something must have happened with the drinking water / my digestion. Took laxatives. Nothing worked. My stomach was killing me but nothing would come out. Then one evening after dinner, I felt it coming. I knew this was it. I bolted for the bathhouse, mentally preparing for the epic event. When I finally waddled in, the stalls were all occupied. At this point I'm freaking out. I'm literally going to shit my pants and in the woods with no means of cleaning. I waddle to the private shower attached to the bathrooms and my desperate mind starts solving problems like I'm Bradley Cooper in Limitless. Initially I think to just shit on the shower drain and waffle stomp it through, but I was not going to be that guy who ruined the nicest shower in the woods for everyone. Like a bolt of lightning I knew what I had to do, so I pooped in the only piece of clothing I could spare, my sock. Obviously my stomach was doing better now and I was hugely relieved. I brought the poop sock to the dumpster nearby and one of my friends saw me on the way. Before I could dispose of the poop sock he strikes up a conversation and starts asking questions about what I'm doing. Internally I'm panicking. The best excuse I could come up with was that I found a sock in the shower stuffed with mud, so I thought it best to throw it away. My friend affirms how good of a guy I am for doing that. I throw the poop sock into the dumpster and my problems are finally over. Mud in a sock is a ridiculous story, but there's absolutely no way he could have guessed that the real situation was much more bizarre. I've never told a soul about this until now. Never will again. Edit. Thanks for the gold and silver. I've really enjoyed reading a lot of these, so I thought I'd share mine. It's a bit of a read but funny. I finished having surgery and had a post-op appointment with my doctor up the hill. Had to go before that while driving up the hill. Figured I'd use the bathroom while in the office. I forgot I had to shit. Impossible as it seems. Well, I drive back down the hill when the bullet train hit my ass. I pulled over the side of the highway, having no place to shit. I grabbed the only thing nearby, a thin empty styrofoam box from Panda Express, on the passenger's seat. Things were moving fast. So fast in fact that I made my first mistake. I missed the box. I had shat all over the driver's seat of my car. I had been on antibiotics too, so we're not talking logs here. We're talking full on mud pie. Split pea soup. It ducking filled the seat. I am doing this acrobatic effort not to dip my ass back in the mess and I somehow open the car door. I grab my phone and pop the trunk. After slamming the car door shut, important later, I run bare ass to the trunk of my car to grab a change clothes I had prayed for. Good thing I didn't make that Goodwill run yet. God's joke wasn't quite over though. I walked back to the driver's door to realize my keys are locked inside the car with the engine running. So now, to make matters worse, I now have to call a tow truck to unlock my car door. Now some Hank the tow truck guy has to stare at the abomination that I left in my seat. I was mortified, and he just stared at me with such bewilderment afterwards. I hung my head and said, it's exactly what it seems. I'm sure that tow truck guy had one hell of a story when he got back home. TLDR, I shat in my car, locked the keys in while it was running. Had to have a guy stare at my shit while he popped the lock. Edit my first silver. Thank you, stranger. I'm glad you guys could get a laugh at my dismay. I look back on it and laugh now too. My sister molested me when I was really young. Still not over it. Still live with her. I don't even know if she even remembers it. For reference, she is 6 years older than me. and she definitely knew what she was doing at the time. I didn't, but I was willing to do it. When I was like 4 we played electric share truth or dare, and she make me do stuff. I still remember what I did, but I would rather not recount that here.
If you made it to the end of the video, you're awesome. 2 pats on the back for you, pat pat. Please feel free to check out our other videos and meet us back here tomorrow for another video of the day.